Hey Pam, it's good to see you. Good to hear from you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Abby Lee. It's really great to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so you've hung out in the Q&As before, right? And I think you're a Pitchin subscriber.
I am a Bitchin subscriber, and I watched a recording of one of your Q&As.
Hey, that counts. But I knew that I had seen you kind of around, and so I just wanted to say, thanks for your support. This project pays my light bills, and so I appreciate that. Let me jump right in. Are you from Boulder, or did you move there later on?
I moved here in 2008. I'm originally from the East Coast. I'm from Rhode Island.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, I know we're going to talk about like athleticism and running, but do you, do other sort of Colorado activities? Do you hike? Do you, any of that stuff?
Yeah, I do hike. I wouldn't call myself an avid hiker, but yeah, I hike, I bike, I run, I swim, I camp, kind of not super willingly, but my husband's a big camper. I kind of tricked him into thinking I was more of a camper than I was when we were dating. And now we're taking our kids camping for like a week soon. Wait, this is
my ears are burning.
This is him. Okay, this is her.
That's professional. Okay.
Yeah. I recently went to, it's like one of my favorite places on earth. It's over in East Tennessee. And I'm always like, hey, friend, like, do you want to come? Do you want to come? Do you want to come? Because I just love it. It's called Cherry Creek Lodge, and it's like a backwoods lodge that runs on propane. There's no electricity. It's lovely. Actually, I have a piece of
that on my list of places.
Yes, Greg White, the guy who runs it, is fabulous. He's a really great cook, and he'll make you vegan food if you want. I actually have a piece coming out about it, so sometimes you do double duty. But anyways, I feel like I'm always trying to scam my friends into.
I would do that. I wanted to also tell you, I used to live in North Carolina. I lived there for 6 years, and long enough to understand that you don't have, like, all Southern accents are not the same. I love your accent. I love listening to you. But yeah, I spent time in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I've driven through the Smokies.
Love it. Yeah, I get a lot of comments about my accent because depending on who you've talked to from the South, like, I used to work for Apple when I lived in Chicago, and our customers, this was in Skokie, so it was right out, it's a suburb of Chicago, and people would be like, are you from Germany? Are you from Australia? And I'd be like, no, I've never left the United States, which I was 19 at the time, so I hadn't really traveled. I was like, no, I'm a redneck.
That's really funny.
Okay, so on that note of, moving from Rhode Island to the Blue Ridge Mountains to Colorado, you mentioned in a conversation about a sort of circuitous, am I saying that right, route to becoming a writer. So I wanted to ask you, how did you make that transition, and were you freelancing while you were still working as an occupational therapist? Can you kind of walk me through those steps?
Yeah, totally. So I got a master's degree in occupational therapy right after college. I was working in healthcare for, from 2002 until roughly like 2014. And I was getting burnt out, but this is sort of, like I said, circuitous. I've always enjoyed writing. Like, I've been like a journaler. And in 2007, I was really into triathlons. That's when I was training for my first Ironman. And back then, blogs were really the only form of social media. And I felt like I was the only triathlete without a blog. And most triathletes were on there just like talking about their training, talking about their races. And I was like, I want to do that. So I started my blog, which was a lot about triathlon in 2007, just to have kind of a place to put my stories. And I had a lot of fun with it. I wasn't expecting to have so much fun with it. I didn't have like a specific niche. Like, I was a lot about triathlon, but not necessarily. And I remember like maybe a few months in, a good friend of mine was like, I can tell that you're starting to like find your voice. And that was a huge compliment. And then I talked to another friend. This was before there was like Reddit or Facebook or anything. The internet wasn't what it is. So I went to a friend who had been
a blogger in LiveJournal, right?
Yeah. I went to a friend who was a freelance writer, and I was like, how would I even begin to get started? And she said, your blog is really cute, but it's really hard to break into. So that hurt. And I was like, oh my God, okay. I'll just keep being an occupational therapist and writing on my little blog. And so now fast forward, it's so convoluted. Right around the time that my first child was born in 2012, I was now working part-time as an occupational therapist, and I co-produced this show called the Listen to Your Mother Show. And it's essentially like 12 people get up and read an essay that they wrote in front of an audience around Mother's Day as a celebration. And it can be just anything about motherhood. And that's where I started to connect with other writers. This was like a national thing. And so I was in this Facebook group with the other producers and directors and realizing, oh my gosh, like freelance writing is actually a thing that I could do. Like other people are doing this. You don't need a journalism degree. Like, okay. So like I submitted like a guest post to Scary Mommy, which doesn't, it still exists. It's different than it was, but it was a, it's really popular like parenting blog. And I don't even think I was expecting or hoping to get paid. I think I knew it was going to be free, but I was just so happy to like have my name out there, have something I wrote on a place other than my blog. And then it just like, it was very, very gradual. I was doing like free guest posts. Then I was like writing for sites that would pay me like $35 for a blog post. And I was pretty thrilled about that. I was still working, had a baby. And then I'm trying to think how this all went down. When my second child was a baby, so she's now 6. When she was tiny, I kept on putting my maternity leave, like extending it. And finally my work was like, are you going to come back? We can't hold your job any longer. And my husband was like, I have been telling you this whole time, like, be a writer. And I was like, I had like major imposter syndrome. I was like, what if I can't do it? I don't know. Like, and so I never really did go back after my second one was born. And my husband secretly, for my 37th birthday, he had collected what he thought were my best blog posts, and he self-published a book for me with like an ISBN number and with blurbs and everything. I was completely blindsided. And I feel like I'm gonna cry. Like that was him saying like, you're a writer and I really want you to pursue this dream. Like, I think you can do it. So that was 2015. And then from there, it just was really gradual. I think the next year was when I got a regular gig doing a weekly post for a parenting website that no longer exists. And then there was like another parenting, it was like a Jewish regional parenting blog I was contributing to. And then a friend was having me do stuff. So it was just like super gradual. And then it was about like a year and a half ago, I started working with a coach, and she helped me really figure out what I wanted my niche to be and what I really wanted to say and do. And things really kind of skyrocketed from there. I now, I write a monthly article for the Washington Post for their wellness section. I've written for Runner's World a couple times. I've written for Outside. I just turned something into The Guardian. So yeah, I feel like, and I'm like making real money now. So
Hey,
that was a long answer to a short question, but.
No, it's, we all kind of have these really unique paths, I think, no one comes into writing to like, I think, make a lot of money. But it's always nice when we end up there, or, that we can at least sustain ourselves. And I'm glad that you mentioned the Washington Post thing, because I was actually going to ask you about that. But before I get there, let me ask you about your niche and your beat. It seems like you write a lot about athletics and running. So can you talk to me about why that's important to you and kind of how you came to that beat?
Yeah, totally. Let's see. I was picked last for everything as a child. And then I ran my first marathon when I was like 22. And I think that really changed my life. I came away from that experience like, you know what, if I can do this, I really think anybody can. Anybody who wants to can, barring like bad knees or something. But I don't know, that experience made me realize like, if you commit to something and you do it, like it is one of the most powerful feelings that I've experienced. It just makes you feel like you could do anything. And I enjoy working out just for the sake of working out. Like it's fun for me. It's motivating for me. It's social for me. It's how I've met a lot of friends. And it's something, I've taught group cycling for a long time. Like, I don't even want to say how long. I feel like it's something I'm knowledgeable about. So when I write about it, I know what's interesting in that arena. I know what questions people are asking. I know what's controversial. I know who the experts are. I feel pretty confident that I'm going to know, I think, did I already say this? I know what questions to ask. And when I get to, I'm sure you experience this, like when I interview experts for my stories, I feel like I'm getting like a mini lecture, like a good lecture, like a college course that you'd want to take lecture. So I learn a lot. It's just really fun. And if my stories help somebody live a healthier lifestyle or answer a question that they had, or specifically when it comes to like women's stuff, I feel like women's sports are so underrepresented. I love to elevate the message that women's sports are just as important as men's sports. So yeah, did I answer your question?
Yeah, you certainly did.
Okay.
A friend of mine said to me yesterday, we were talking about, I just did a story about tree loss after a tornado here in Nashville. And my friend said, it seems really overwhelming to learn so much every time you do a story. And that just kind of, it resonated with me when you're like, every time you interview an expert, you get a little mini lecture in a good way. And I'm like, yes, it's one of my favorite parts of this job is, you learn so much every single story you do. And so you kind of, even if you have a beat, you still are somewhat of a generalist because you know a lot about so many different things, and it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So let me backtrack a little bit to the Washington Post, because my original question was, is it a standing relationship, or do you have to pitch every time? But it seems like you have a standing relationship with the Washington Post. Did you pitch a column, or did you meet an editor? How did that kind of happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a little bit of both. So I think I first pitched the on parenting section, I want to say like the end of 2017. I think I pitched the editor directly, and she liked my pitch enough to say, why don't I invite you to the Talent Network, which is the Washington Post's like platform for how they process their pitches. So she invited me. I put the pitch in through the Talent Network, and then it was rejected. But at least I was in the Talent Network. So I thought, okay, like someday this is going to happen. I think it was about a year later. I don't know how many pitches later. Maybe it was my third pitch to the parenting people. They accepted it. And then I think I wrote for them at least, how many more times? Multiple more times. Maybe in 2018, multiple times I wrote for them, maybe like 3 or 4. And then I pitched a different type of story they have a column called a section called Inspired Life. I think that story went viral because people I hadn't talked to in a very long time were like, oh my God, it was so cool to see that you were the author of this one. It was about a lady and this is kind of a cool story. It was about a lady who's 74 and was competing in the Ironman World Championships.
I think I saw the byline in your portfolio. I feel like I did see that.
You might have. Okay. So not only was she 74 and like a stellar athlete, she only learned to swim when she was like in her 50s.
Yes. I mean, I just saw the headline. Unfortunately, I didn't get to read the whole thing. We were being struck by like, oh, okay, how cool. Like a woman in her 50s learned to swim, and now she's doing like Ironman.
Yeah, I actually found out about her as far as like, why is this my beat and whatever. I found out about her in like a triathlete women's like Facebook group that I'm in. And I reached out to her. Oh no, that's not how. It doesn't matter. That's not actually, I forgot. I found out about her on Twitter. Anyway, I reached out. I was like, hey, can I interview you? So I interviewed her before I had nailed down the pitch. And like before anybody wanted it, but I just thought this is such an interesting story. Someone's going to want it. I don't know if I should admit this, but I will. I pitched it to like 4 or 5 different outlets before the Washington Post accepted it. Because not that I don't like working with them, I do. I just thought this could be a really cool opportunity to break into a new place. But nobody wanted it until the Washington Post did. So I guess all this to say, if you have an idea that you think is important, I would say do not give up on it. So they wanted it. And I think kind of because it went viral, it was about 6 weeks later, the editor of the wellness section emailed me. I have never interacted with her before. She just introduced herself and said, I saw that story, and then I read some of your other stuff, and I'm looking for somebody to write about fitness who is physically active themselves. Can we talk? Are you interested? And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding? So, and to answer the question of do I pitch, usually I'll pitch like a few ideas every month, and then she'll pick like 1 or 2, and then sometimes she assigns me things.
Got it. That's yeah. I mean, that definitely helps demystify that. I mean, that's kind of, as we've kind of talked about, this newsletter is developing, and you're our very first Bitchin Writer interview. So over time, so I'm really excited about that. And I think one of the goals is kind of demystifying that process, because when you're starting out, whether it's gradual like it was for you, or whether you're, a journalism student and you're trying to jump into freelancing, it can be really intimidating, or at least for me it was. I don't know if that's the case for everybody, but I just remember thinking like, how do I do this?
Oh yeah, so much.
So do you think every freelance journalist or writer should have a beat or a niche?
That's a great question. I can't speak for everybody. For me, it really helped me in so many ways. It helped me cut down on like the mental overwhelm. I don't know about you, but like I'm in a lot of like Facebook writer groups and I'm on Twitter, and it was previously like felt like every opportunity that I heard of that felt like I could possibly do, I had to jump on. And so I had a lot of like inner turmoil of like, oh my God, I'm missing out. And then when I narrowed down what I wanted to do, it made it very simple for me to say, this is an opportunity for me, or this is not an opportunity for me, or hey, it might not be, but because of X, Y, Z, like, I don't know, the money or something, like, or then yeah, I could make room for this. Like I write for like my local newspaper has me do, I guess you would call them advertorials. I'll interview a local business and do like a little business profile about them. It's like one interview. It's incredibly easy. There's no edits. Is the per word rate good? No. But is the hourly good? Yes. It's not really my beat. I don't care. I'm like, the other stuff doesn't necessarily pay a ton. So it's fine to have that balance. But for me, I mean, I think it does make it easier if you have a beat, because then when you show your editors that you have clips that are relevant, like that's easy. And that's not to say that like, honestly, if I'm writing a profile about like an oil and gas magnate, I think as a clip, I could say, hey, here's a profile I wrote about a runner. They're both profiles. So that's not to say you can't cross niches, but I think it's just helpful, and it helps you establish the relationships that you want to have.
That you're right about that. It's definitely clarifying, and it brings a lot of focus. I don't remember who said this, but I was listening to a business guru who said that, overwhelm comes with randomness. And that's kind of what we're talking about. When you're a writer, you can write about anything theoretically. And so it can be overwhelming. But then again, you do have to make those concessions. Like I wouldn't even say this is a concession, but I also write for an adult toy company. And they're one of the bigger, that's the bulk of my income every month, is that one writing client. So sometimes you do, make those, like there's also another publication I write for that they pay $100 a feature. It's not a lot, but they pay the day that it runs. And so it's like, if I'm in a bind and I know that I need $100, it's, easy enough to pitch them and publish it and get paid. So sometimes you do things because it's practical, not necessarily because in your niche. That makes sense.
Exactly.
So you talk a lot about imposter syndrome. We were talking a little bit before we hopped on this call. And I'm wondering how imposter syndrome has affected your life, or what that's been like in your journey.
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing for me about imposter syndrome is just like recognizing it. Like I told you, I was picked last for everything when I was a child and hated sports and wasn't good at them. And then I ran that marathon and I was like, okay. I think it was another like 8 years until I actually thought I was an athlete. I was running marathons. I was like every spare minute I got, I was like in spandex, like my life was like running, swimming, biking, races. I was getting up earlier on weekends to go meet people to train than I was like for actual work. And I'm not really a morning person. And I couldn't bring myself to say I was an athlete, like, or a triathlete or anything until it's hard. It's not like there was like this aha moment, but I think it was around the time I heard about imposter syndrome and I learned what it was. And I was like, oh my God, I have that. I totally have that. And then I think I was able to go, wait a minute, I actually am an athlete. And I think recognizing that is helpful for me. I've tried to turn it into a positive, like, oh, if I have imposter syndrome, it's a sign that I'm out of my comfort zone. And if I'm out of my comfort zone, it means I'm growing. And that's good. I think if you never worry that you're an imposter, I think two things. One, it means you're probably not getting out of your comfort zone. Or two, you maybe are arrogant. Like maybe you should be double checking your work a little bit more. I don't think it should paralyze you, right? You have to find that happy medium of like, don't let it paralyze you, but recognize it and move on, and like recognize those thoughts, like I have a lot of thoughts, like when I work with a new editor of like, oh my God, they're going to hate it. 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 And then I have to say to myself, no, you're working with a new editor and you don't really know them yet. And you do this every time. So chill out. So.
Yep, I do the same thing every time. I'm always like waiting on those edits, and I know they're gonna eviscerate my copy, and then that like doesn't happen. So, so on the subject of edits, it might be a good transition into rejection. We've kind of mentioned, hey, man, it's quarantine, it's the pandemic, budgets are being cut. There's a lot more rejection or even just no response. You know, I've been getting ghosted a lot. Seems like maybe we've had some of those similar experiences. So I'm wondering, you know, I don't know if you track your pitches or not, but if you have noticed an uptick in acceptances, if you have noticed an uptick in rejections, or you know, if you've been tracking how many non-responses you've gotten, and also outside of the numbers and data, so to speak, you know, what's your advice for dealing with rejection? Because we're all getting a lot of it right now.
That's a great question. So I haven't done the numbers, but I do track. Like, I haven't done them recently. I will say I did my numbers at this maybe a month into the pandemic, like in April, and I was like, oh God, this isn't looking good. And I feel like overall, whether it's a pandemic or not, I definitely get ghosted more than I get rejections. I get ghosted, as I know, I think you've tweeted about this. Like, I get ghosted so often that I'm like thrilled when I get a rejection.
Yeah.
Like, beyond thrilled. Like, yes, especially
you feel something, even if it wasn't good, like you felt something.
Yes, you had the time to write me back. Like, that's nice. I've had a few rejections actually turn into positives. Like, for example, one editor passed my pitch on to a different editor at that publication, and she said, hey, it was a great pitch. It's not a fit for us, but could I assign you something in the future? And I was like, absolutely. So now I try to pitch her every so often just so she remembers me. She still hasn't said yes, but I'm like, that was encouraging. Or I had another editor who didn't accept anything that I pitched. He was like sort of interested. And then I was like, well, what about this, this, and this? And then he was like, no, actually, what about this? And he assigned me 2 things. And then I pitched him again, and he was like, that's sort of what I want, but what about this? And he assigned me something else. I'm like, okay, so sometimes rejections can be the start of a good relationship. And how to deal with rejection, I think you just have to know that it's part of it, and they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the idea. And it doesn't even mean that it was a bad idea. Like, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of PR pitches from PR people that want me to feature their client or their product.
I get a lot of those in the music industry because I used to be in the music industry, and I feel like I can't write about as many albums as there are that I get in my inbox. I just can't.
Exactly. And so a lot of these people are presenting you with ideas that could be really useful, but they're not useful to me right now. Like, it just didn't come at the right time. Or honestly, sometimes maybe you sent me 3 paragraphs and it's like, I don't have time to even read that. Like, tell me what you want quick. So I think about, how does an editor feel when I pitch them? Did I get to the point quick? Was it sexy? Like, was my headline sexy? Like, there was a really great PR pitch that I actually used. Their pitch gave me an idea for a story, and I was able to use their source as one of my sources, and it was fantastic. And it worked, I think, in part because it was a good idea, and they got me at the right time. So I also have to realize my pitch could have been excellent, but it doesn't work for them right now. They have an editorial calendar. So trying to take it personally, and it's super helpful for me. I don't just do straight up like media journalism stuff. I'm blanking right now. Whom else am I working for? I'm working for other people. I'm doing like content marketing stuff. Like you mentioned your adult toys, I'm working for a telehealth company, and they'll be like, here's the blog post I want you to write. Here's the expert. It's very simple. It's straightforward. So having other clients, and again, like telehealth, because I do health and fitness, that's in my niche, or I just had somebody approach me because they read my work in the Washington Post, and they were like, hey, can you do copy for my startup? And I'm like, okay, I think I could. Yeah, I'd love to. So that would be another thing where I don't have to spend all this time pitching, and they'll hand me the work. I mean, it's not a done deal yet, but I'm imagining that it'll work out, fingers crossed. But yeah, just having other income streams is super helpful, and it keeps you less focused on all the rejections. Oh, and pitch a lot. I don't always do this, but the more I pitch, the less obsessed I am about refreshing my email and like wondering about that one pitch.
Yeah, it's interesting because I found, first of all, I mean, the more I pitch, the more acceptances I get, but also the more I pitch, I'll look back at my pitch tracking document and I'll be like, oh, I forgot to follow up on that. Or like, oh, I forgot that I pitched that. And then, or sometimes I'll get a rejection and I'll be like, oh, I forgot I even pitched that. And then I'll, push it along to someone else. So that's some really good advice about dealing with rejection. And, it seems like a lot of us also do content marketing, which I also have bookmarked to talk about in just a moment, because it's more consistent income. And, pitching is a lot of unpaid labor. I talk about this with my writer friends a lot. we're getting paid $0 for hours in, you know, a week and looking up pitches and putting them together. So we talked a little bit about the book of stellar blog posts that your husband got self-published for you, but you also have another book that people can buy, and I wanted to give you some time to talk about that. And also I think there's a discount code that we wanted to mention as well.
Abby Lee, thank you. I was gonna say Abby Lee. Thank you so much for asking me about that. Yeah, this book is called 7 Pitches That Sold, and I had a really good year last year. And I thought, you know what? I think I learned a lot of the things last year that I would have liked to know when I was starting out. Like you had said before, pitching can be so intimidating. I ran one, I think, what is the pitch that the Washington Post said, hey, put it in the Talent Network, and then rejected? Some draft of it I shared with a friend, and she was like, I don't even know actually what you're trying to say. So, you know, my pitches needed work. But then I was like, wow, I don't know what other people's acceptance rates are, but 2019, my pitch acceptance rate had gone from the year before, like, I don't know, it was embarrassing, like 5% acceptance to 33% acceptance.
Nice.
So I thought, yeah, I was like, oh, I think I'm doing something right here. So I made a little ebook. It has 7 pitches that sold, as the title indicates. I kind of called out what parts of it I think were useful, and I explained why, like in the margins. And there's also just kind of some best practice things in the beginning. So it's a total of 30 something pages, and then you've got the pitches at the end. So that is available on Gumroad. And
how much is it normally?
It is well, I changed the price around to experiment with what's going to work. Right now, we are recording on July 16th, right? Right now it's Right now it's $17. I don't imagine it going wildly above or below that price. I'm just playing around. But Abby Lee people will get $5 off with the code Abby5. And that's good forever. That will never expire.
So it's ABBY and the numeral 5, correct?
You got it. Yep.
Does it matter if it's caps or no?
You know, I don't think it matters, but when I put the discount code into Gumroad to tell it, it forced me to make it all lowercase.
Got it. Cool. Just wanted to make sure that people weren't like, hello, what is happening?
Great question. Yeah.
That's also something I would do. Yeah, you're right, man. Ooh, I look back at some of my pitches for various reasons, and sometimes it hurts my soul.
Yeah.
I look back at some of my first bylines in college too. Some of my first big bylines. Like I had this, my grandmother had it framed. I still have it. It was my first Chicago Reader byline. And I thought I was a smart ass. You know, I really thought I had something to say. It was a political piece. I was covering the 2016 primary election, and some poor editor took it upon her to commission that and pay me for it. And it was, I mean, I did the reporting, you know, but you look back on stuff and you're like, whoa, I'm so glad that I have come so far. But just, you know, all that to say, everybody starts somewhere, and you're going to have pitches that you look back on and it just breaks your soul. And if it's not that way, then you're not getting better. So
completely agree. Oh, do we have time for me to tell you one other thing that might be useful to other writers?
Yeah, of course. I actually, let's see, I have I have like 3 questions left. We have plenty of time. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Okay, one thing when I had said earlier, hey, diversify your income stream, another thing that I do that I don't know if a lot of people are doing is I syndicate some of the stuff that I can. So what I mean is when you go to the grocery store and you see those free magazines, like specifically mine are parenting, like, so you see those free, like, you know, we have, what is it called? Like Colorado Parent. There's one of those.
Natural Parent here, yeah.
Natural Parent, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So every major metro market has a free parenting magazine that you get, I mean, non-pandemic times, assuming you're going to the grocery store, and they will reprint your work, right? They don't need to have original work. I'm sure some of it is original, but, and the contracts that I have signed with a lot of my parenting stuff grants me rights to reuse it. So what I did was last year, it was a lot of upfront effort because I did it last year, but now I'm just redoing it. I took all my, because I was doing a lot of parenting stuff, I have like probably 100 articles that I have the rights to. I put those into, I put editor contacts. I have like over 100 editors in a MailChimp list, which is probably not allowed, but whatever, they can unsubscribe if they want.
Listen, freelancers, I say this all the time, like we have bills to pay. And if somebody wants to get persnickety because we're pitching simultaneously or syndicating things, like they're more than, if you follow my advice, like yeah, there may be consequences. Editors may get persnickety with you about those things, but I'm personally willing to take those risks in my own life because I have bills to pay. So
I hear you. Yeah. So I have the editors in like a spreadsheet, and then I've got my old articles that I've already written and already gotten paid for. They go out in a MailChimp campaign twice a week. I make them timely, like, 2 months before Father's Day. I've got my Father's Day stuff going out. And, maybe they'll pay anywhere from like $25 to $50 a reprint, but it's money for something that I already did. So like, I think last year I probably earned like $3,000 from that. So not a lot of money, but like, that's money for doing basically nothing, like work I've already done. And now this year, now that I've already set it up, all I have to do is click on what date I want that email to go out. It's incredibly simple. It's great.
That's great. Good for you. That's really smart. I have to think about
how I can think of it. If I am so.
As I get more into local reporting, because I really have wanting to do more investigative work, that's probably less possible, but definitely something to keep in mind, especially for my video game stuff, because I do a lot of games writing as well. So I think I have 2 questions left, and the first of those is, what did you learn from your worst byline, and what have you learned from your best byline?
Oh, that's a great question.
Quotation marks, because it's so subjective.
I'm going to think for a second, but hang on. What is it? Sorry, I have no childcare.
Hey, sorry. Hello.
This is Abby Lee. This is Charlotte. My scissors, yes.
Charlotte, it's so nice to meet you. That's a very lovely dress or tank top that you've got on there.
It's a dress.
Cool. Okay. All right. You got the scissors. We're good. Okay. So what if I, thank you. Sorry. Before I came on, she goes, your makeup looks professional. She goes, you look good. Not like you're going on a date, but like you're going on an interview. And I was like, perfect. She's great.
Charlotte approved. You know that you've done well. So good job.
Thanks. Okay. So what have I learned from my best and my worst bylines? First, I have to figure out what is my worst and best bylines. Oh my gosh, you kind of caught me off guard. Let me think of my worst. That might be easier to think of. Oh my God, what's my worst byline?
And it is a really subjective thing too. Like worst could just be like one time I had to interview a former presidential pardon attorney, and she told me verbatim, this is a quote, so I'm allowed to say it. She said, "You don't know what the fuck you're talking about." That's not my worst byline, but it was one of those moments where I was like a little gutted. And so, it doesn't necessarily have to be the worst quote unquote copy or story, but just, anything that you feel like you have really just learned. I was able to turn it around, but boy, that was a really hard.
Whew. Yeah. Gosh, I can't think of anything that dramatic, but I will say, like, as I go through, like when I told you I was setting up that reprint MailChimp thing, as I go through my old articles, I'm like popping them into a Word document. I'm figuring out how many words, and then I'm putting them in the MailChimp. I have to look at them again. And these are things that I haven't looked at in like 4 or 5 years, some of them. And I'm like a little embarrassed that I'm like, oh my God, why am I basically clearing my throat for 2 or 3 paragraphs before I explain what it is I actually want to say? Like, so I guess I've learned less is more. It really, be as concise as possible. Sorry, that's like a boring lesson, but I've learned that. I'm going to think of something really brilliant like in 2 hours, and then I'm going to email you.
I get email all the time, not like pitches from subscribers who are like asking for pitch edits. And that's the number one tip that I keep giving is conciseness. Like you could cut out 200-300 words out of that pitch and you'd be golden. So like,
yeah, totally. Or yeah, like one time I agonized over like a concluding paragraph, not realizing like it was a reported story. I didn't really need one. It was kind of a reported essay. Anyway, the editor deleted the whole entire thing. And I was like, why did I? Okay, cool. Okay, what did I learn from my best byline? I think well, it's kind of repetitive, but I think that like maybe one of my, best byline. I don't know if it was my best byline, but I definitely learned from that story about the triathlete that like, if you have an idea that you think is interesting, don't give up on it. Also, I did tweak that pitch. Like I would go back, partly I think I tweaked it depending on the outlet, but also when you realize it's not working, change it. I think there's going to be pitches from this year that never landed because of coronavirus or because of whatever. Probably go back to them next year with fresh eyes and go, you know what? They're not even going to remember that I pitched this last year, and I can tweak it and make it better. Like you can always make something better.
That's really smart. And for a lot of things, if you pitch it this year, there may be new developments that make it timely next year. You can always find a way to either make something evergreen, make it timely again. That's really clever. I think my last question is, do you have any parting advice for writers who are in the beginning stages of freelancing? Maybe, whether, no matter what age, whether they're graduating school or, they're looking for a career change, what do you wish you had known in the beginning?
That's great. What do I wish I had known in the beginning? I think I wish I would have established my niche a little bit earlier. Like, back out from what your immediate goal is. Like my immediate goal right now, like, I'd really like to be published in the New York Times. That to me would be like the pinnacle of like, I'm a legit writer, right? But I can't focus on that because I can't totally control that, right? But backing out a little wider, but like, what's really my goal? Do I really want yeah, I do. But also, I have a message. Like, my message is to empower women athletes and to help give people tools to live their best lives. Like, that's really my mission. And so when I think of it like that, and I think of, hey, you know what? I might have an idea and a perspective and a background where I can actually help people by furthering that mission, by perhaps writing a story, perhaps for the New York Times, perhaps wherever. When I think about it as what can I contribute to my reader's life, how can I make their life better? It helps me not be so obsessed with like whether I was rejected or accepted or whatever. It like takes the focus off of you, and it just makes it easier to keep going forward because you have a bigger mission. So I think that would be my advice. Like, look at what you can give your readers instead of what you can get, like the byline or the money or the recognition. What can you give? But also get a friend, get a buddy who you can really rely on. And it takes some trial and error. Not everybody's going to be the greatest fit for you. Find a buddy that you can bounce your stuff off of who will be honest with you. You need feedback from somebody else. And I feel really fortunate to have found a few people that we have that kind of relationship.
So ask not what your byline can do for you, but what you can do for your byline. No, you're right though. Finding purpose is really important. There's been books written about start with why, and we all have something, we want to be a writer because it's within us, but also because we have a message. So that's really important. So, hey, thanks for chatting today. It was really
so fun.
I appreciate it. And this should be going out tomorrow. And what a great inaugural Bitchin interview. I don't know if I'm going to name this like Bitchin Writers or something, I don't know. That was also like just like a random name. So I may make it something more appropriate in the future. That was just kind of what it was when it was birthed. So anyways.
I like it. I mean, you can always switch gears, but I like it.
Well, thanks. Because I'm sort of an irreverent person anyway. I always have been. And so it's kind of in the spirit of that. And also making freelancing less intimidating and not so serious. So, Well, thank you again for your time. I will let you know if I need anything via email, and I will talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Abby Lee. It was so much fun. Okay.
Talk soon. Bye.